Might there still be one more coaching staff move on the books? Find out next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, welcome in Tuesday edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. Got the coffee going on this cold morning. It's double digits below zero outside, so let's not spend too much time on that. We thought the assistant coaching carousel at Nebraska for 2025 had stopped spinning a couple of weeks ago with the hire of Mike Eckler as special teams coordinator from Tennessee. And here we are moving toward March, and we're wondering, is it firing back up again? On Monday, Pete Nakos of On3 reported that EJ Barthel, Nebraska's running backs coach, who's set to head into his third season with Matt Rhule and the Huskers, is a top candidate for the open running backs job at Texas. Tashard Choice left the Longhorns last week to become the running backs coach for the Detroit Lions. Barthel's connection to Texas is that offensive coordinator Kyle Flood, the former Rutgers head coach, knows Barthel. Barthel worked for Flood at Rutgers in 2013 and 14. So something to ponder for Nebraska and its fans.
Yeah, interesting. In the timing, there was probably always going to be one more churn after the NFL finished up and they went on their hires, and that's pretty much exactly what's happening here. I don't know if Barthel is I think you'll ask Nebraska fans and they'll be maybe surprised that he ends up on a list like this. But as we've talked about before, Mitch, it's a lot of it's about connections and who you know, and then also, how the current program, how the program that you're at, its fan base or whatever it might be, feels about you at the moment. And I don't know. You ask Husker fan right now, what do grade me EJ Barthel through 2 years? I don't know if it's anything more than like a C at this point. So it's all kind of fascinating once you bundle it all up there.
Yeah, I think some Nebraska fans, if you took the temperature right now, would be okay with Matt Rhule having to go out and search for a running backs coach ahead of spring practice. I've actually heard that from some fans who believe that Barthel is in some kind of limbo and that's not good for Nebraska going into 2025 because of the way that Rhule restructured really everything. Wherever he had a move that he was thinking about making, it appears that he made that move, whether it was to be very aggressive in the way that he changed offensive coordinators. He made a move at special teams coordinator, of course, after the bowl game, was aggressive about that. Gave Dana Holgorsen the green light to make a move and bring in his guy as the wide receivers coach. So why, if there's some questions about the right person being in place at running backs coach, why are you walking on eggshells with that one? And I really don't think that Matt Rhule is. I think Matt Rhule wants to keep EJ Barthel. Otherwise, he would have done something right now. But it is difficult to deny the fact that he's the one coach on this staff who does not have a contract in place for 2025. At least that's been released to the media. So Barthel made just under $300,000 last season, and there are no salary figures available for him yet for the season ahead. Every other assistant has a known number, and it makes Barthel right now the lowest paid coach on Nebraska's staff among the full-time on-field coaches. Phil Simpson, back from Florida State, is at $350. Terry Brad and Phil Snow are at $400. Rob Dvorak, the linebackers coach, who was on par with Barthel and Garrett McGuire when they started in 2023, Dvorak is now making $450. So maybe there's some fire where that smoke exists.
Oh, I mean, like, I think you would specifically do that, if you thought that there was a chance that he wouldn't be back, or if he was. I mean, maybe even if he was offered this specific job, that he would take it. Like,
Yeah.
oftentimes, it's not quite as simple as coach leaves, takes job at another program. Like, there's, especially in the position that Nebraska's in right now, you just mentioned it, they're in a state of flux. Like, they changed a lot of their coaches over. In a lot of those cases, Rhule knew well before those coaches left for whatever programs that they went to, that they that they were going to. And so you could kind of prepare for that a little bit. And I don't know specifically what it is with this, but the contract thing, Doug, I think it gives you a hint on just how they, how where they think he might be next year. And if he does come back, and if he doesn't get this job, and he does end up at Nebraska, well, I guess first of all, if he doesn't get this job, it wouldn't be surprising to me for him to pop up as a candidate for another job if another job opens up at that position. But then, if he ends up back at Nebraska, his salary would come out and he'd get a raise and the entire thing.
Right. He's going to be under contract in 2025 if he's at Nebraska, and he's likely to get a pay bump. Kyle Flood has been at Texas since 2021. So he's been with Sark for a while. So you wonder if that connection between Flood and Barthel is strong, if maybe it's something that they've discussed. Hey, if an opening comes up, this coach might be thinking about leaving. We'll see. We'll find out, after the NFL season. I'm gonna want to talk to you. It's possible that those things have been said, and then if you're Barthel or you're Barthel's agent, maybe you hold off on something with Nebraska until you know that there is not a move that's going to be imminent. I kind of want to pose this question and dig into this running back situation and maybe why some people around, not inside the program but outside of the program, feel the way that they do about the Nebraska running backs coach, like kind of indifferent, like, hey, if there's a change, there's a change. Like, Matt Rhule's going to go hire a good coach. I think that's some of it, that people see that Rhule, when there's an opening, that he generally finds a way to make the next hire an upgrade.
Well, and he's been kind of hot lately too, right?
Yeah,
Mitch? Like they've made some good ones this offseason.
Absolutely. But is it something that would I think you want to be careful what you wish for. Like, I don't know that the issues that Nebraska's had at running back are necessarily related to EJ Barthel's ability to coach that position. Like, look at the development that he has fostered with Emmett Johnson over the last 2 years, and how Emmett went from somebody when Barthel came in who wasn't a factor, even early in that first year in 2023, wasn't a factor. And then he got his opportunity late in 2023, and he's run for 1,000 yards over the last 2 seasons. And look at what he did with Dante Dowdell coming in from Oregon as a transfer who couldn't get on the field his true freshman year. There wasn't a lot of hype around, maybe there was hype, but there wasn't a lot of excitement about the way that things were going in the spring for Dante Dowdell until you got to the last practice of the spring game. You saw him cut loose on a big run, and then he went out and ran for 600 plus yards for Nebraska. I think Barthel has done a nice job with the backs that he's had to work with in Lincoln for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I think my main complaint about the position has been how they sort of structured it, right? Like, where it doesn't seem like anyone can agree, or maybe the circumstances dictate that you don't have like a head and shoulders number one guy, and therefore that person doesn't get those carries. Maybe that would have been, or maybe that is the case, or will be the case this year, but I don't think that's necessarily an EJ Barthel thing. I think it's a Matt Rhule thing. And so
Satterfield,
like
it was a Satterfield thing when he,
that is going to probably exist whether or not EJ Barthel is here. But at the same time, Mitch, like, I think there's a certain feeling from Nebraska fans of okay, well, we've seen it go this way, and it doesn't necessarily blow me away. It wouldn't be horrible right now to roll the dice at that position. Like, I'm okay with what we have. I'm not super fired up about what we have. So maybe it's time to put the chips on the table a little bit. And I think that's the kind of gamble that you're explaining.
Yeah, I think it's more of an offensive issue. It's more of like a philosophical thing about the way that running backs are used in the offense that Matt Rhule wants to run at Nebraska, or has wanted to run at Nebraska until Dana Holgorsen came in. And then he said, I want to run the offense that Dana Holgorsen wants to run. That's what Matt Rhule wanted. And Dana, in the 4 games that we saw him coach, created a situation where there were defined roles. More, and I think that's what people wanted to see mostly were defined roles at the running back spot. And there were more defined roles from the time that Nebraska went out to USC and then came home for Wisconsin, played Iowa, and the bowl game. You saw Emmett Johnson become a 3-down back. You saw Dowdell fill more of the short yardage role, and then Dowdell leaves for the portal. You lose Gabe Urban to the portal, who just wasn't able to give Nebraska a lot because of the injury that he was coming off. Ramir Johnson's gone to graduation, and Emmett stays, and you're left with the situation where it's all inexperienced incoming freshmen and Emmett Johnson heading into 2025. So it's an unsettled position for sure. You can't just have one player. You need more than that. So when we come back after the break, let's talk about that and whether this running backs position, with or without EJ Barthel as the coach, is the most unsettled spot on the Nebraska roster. That's coming up next. First, I want to take a second to tell you about TurboTax. Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that can be a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't have to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20 forms, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today. Get matched with your expert who's ready to take on your taxes, take them off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates, only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees.
All right, welcome back on a Tuesday. Locked on Nebraska. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. This is a great excuse to take stock of the running back position, honestly.
Yep.
As we're a month away still from spring ball, let's talk about the position. We know what Nebraska has coming back, or the head of the snake, I guess, if you will. Emmett Johnson assumes the leading role at that position, unquestionably, for the first time in his career. And then the rest of the room is really young. And I don't know, like Quentin Ives, the combo of I think there's just a couple carries in between the rest of the 4 scholarship running backs in the room, which also includes incoming freshmen Jamarian Parker and Connor Booth. So it's fascinating. Outside of Emmett Johnson, if you were really pleading to see Emmett Johnson, the carry guy, like the guy who gets a lot of the carries in this offense, your best opportunity to see that so far is right now.
Yeah, it's makes you a little nervous, I think, because look around the Big Ten, and I think you have to compare it to the Big Ten because of the type of football that's played in this league and what it requires for a running back to be able to thrive. Penn State and Ohio State last year were the 2 best teams at using their running backs, and both teams had 2-headed monsters. So it's hard to expect that you can beat Nebraska, a team that's trying to get like to the level below where those 2 teams were at from a production standpoint, and say, we're going to do this with one proven player. Somebody among that group behind Emmett Johnson in the spring or in the fall, preferably in the spring, and both of the true freshmen, Parker and Booth, are in camp for the spring. Somebody's going to have to really step up and be the player who can complement Emmett Johnson and be on the field, who Nebraska can rely on in big moments, because you're not going to get by with just one player. Defined roles is one thing. Having somebody who's your number one is fine, but it can't just be that player. So for me, there is no bigger question on the Nebraska roster when you look position by position than what's going to happen over the next 6 months at the running back spot. Who's going to step up? Or if there isn't somebody who's an obvious candidate coming out of the spring, can Nebraska go into the portal and find a complementary piece who can walk in right away, learn the offense, and be on the field in week 1 against Cincinnati?
All the signals that we have to that question, Mitch, are no. I mean, as far as I remember, just kind of trying to remember the dots of December, as Nebraska was active in the transfer portal. I don't really remember them kicking the tires on anybody at that position. They didn't feel like Nebraska identified that as a position where they needed to be active. And they lost Dante Dowdell in the portal, and maybe they thought he was, slated to come back, and they almost lost Emmett Johnson. They got him back, and maybe they think, well, hey, that's an addition, kind of, and he gets to take on the lead role there. But it's really thin. It's really scary. It's curious to me how they didn't identify that as a spot where they need to go out and get a guy. Maybe they know something that we don't about one of those young guys. But yeah, it's and there's still time. Like you said, there's still another window, but it's thin. That's for sure.
My theory is that, one, they didn't want to lose Johnson by being active in the portal and giving the appearance. Actions speak louder than words, and they can say all they want that Emmett, you're our guy. But if the next day they turn around and they're bringing in running backs on visits from the portal, what kind of a message does that send to Emmett, who was clearly thinking about leaving? He declared his intentions to go into the portal before the portal opened, and then changed his mind on that and decided to stay for the time being. But and we have no reason to believe that he hasn't chosen to stay for the rest of his career, but that's always out there. That concern is always out there. So I think part of it is that they wanted to make a commitment to him and show him that they were making a commitment to him because they feel like he can do good things for them next year. But I also think they wanted to play the wait and see game and give these freshmen an opportunity, that they really think they have something in one or both of these guys. And they like what Quentin Ives did in very limited opportunities. He scored a touchdown in the bowl game.
There was some buzz about him from bowl practices, and then he appeared in the bowl game, but there wasn't anything that was like, whoa, here he comes, Yeah,
there's been buzz about him since he redshirted, since his redshirt year, the Matt Rhule's first season. And I don't know on Mekhi Nelson, there was a little bit of buzz at one point about him during the season when things were shaken out at that position and Nebraska was maybe looking for a spark. But we're going to have to see more to have any kind of confidence that Mekhi Nelson, the late add to Nebraska's newcomer class a year ago in the summer, is somebody that they can expect to have out there in the rotation. So I think that they're open to the possibility after the spring, if everybody sees that they need to get a running back. Like if you go to practice and you're a player or an assistant coach or you're the offensive coordinator and it's apparent that they're going to need more than Emmett Johnson, then I think they're open at the end of April to going and finding somebody. And it's a position where you can, look at the NFL draft. Running backs are running backs, and there's great ones that are very, very few and far between. But otherwise, you get down to level 2, and it's almost like, all right, let's just find somebody who we can plug in, who we can trust, and go from there.
Well, to tie this whole thing together, Mitch, if you have to make a change at the running back coach position, doesn't it, if that new coach comes in and maybe it's a coach who's already going to get elevated, from the already existing staff, but that person grabs reins of the position and, it's late in the game, right? And that person grabs reins of the position, and does that person owe anything to Emmett Johnson to say hey, we're not going to go into the portal. You are definitely our guy. They have to build it for the future too. Nebraska has what would equate to one more semester left with Emmett Johnson. Right. And no, I guess he's a junior, so maybe not, but I never know how old people are anymore. but they still have
he's
to
got
go
2 years
through.
eligibility. Right.
So, like, you know what I mean? Like, it gives them a fresh,
Yeah,
a fresh start.
he's not Adrian Peterson. You're not mortgaging your future because you have to have him. You need him this year. He's a huge piece, and you see how important he is. But you can't make promises like that. Like they need depth at that position. And I'm not saying that Nebraska made a promise in the winter to not recruit another running back out of the portal. If someone had presented himself and Nebraska was interested, I think they would have taken him. It's more just showing that commitment to Emmett, because I think there's been concerns after each of the past 2 seasons that he might head in more so this last year. But so something you said there when we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but if EJ Barthel does decide to take another option, if he goes to Texas, is Nebraska's running backs coach on this staff? Is it Jamar Mosey? Is he the guy that you just elevate? Because I think they need to
name that I thought of immediately.
I think you have to do something regardless for Jamar Mosey between now and August, because of what he's done for the Nebraska program over the last year, since he came in last July. The bridges that he's built, the players that he's helped you recruit, his impact has been huge. And the guy is a coach at heart. Like, he was a high school head coach. He was a running back in college. So I think there's a real possibility, yes, in part because we're almost to March, but also because of what Mosey has done, that if there's a change to be made, if you have a hole to fill, that he's the obvious choice.
Definitely the first name that I thought of. Definitely the guy that I was referencing when I said that. So, I mean, that feels obvious to me as a plug and play if you're to find yourself in that situation. But we'll see how this one plays out over the next few days or a week or so here. When we return and finish out the podcast here, Matt Rhule sat down with 24/7 Sports Josh Pate. Wide-ranging, hour-long. Rhule had a lot of things to say. We'll dive into a couple of the quotes when we come back.
We're back. Tuesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. Connor, I stepped outside this morning to let the dog relieve himself, and double digits below zero. I think it was about 11 below when I opened the door. It cleared up my head. I can tell you're battling a little cold there. You might want to just go out and give yourself some fresh air. Stick the head out and see what that does for you.
Okay. All right. That's a good suggestion. It's also like these days, these next couple days here, by the way, we're looking like at the 50s next week, which is amazing. These next couple days, like I'm in a constant state of concern about it being too, like, things in the house breaking because it's too cold. Like, just, we need to get through this, make it through. And then, the latter parts of February may bring some nice weather for us.
How's the snow removal? Have you been keeping up? Is everything going okay?
Well, I mean, I did it yesterday when I got back from work in the afternoon, and then it snowed some more in the evening. So there's another thin layer on top of it. I'm gonna rely on the sun to help me at this point in time. That's what I'm saying.
Good strategy with the temp being what it is. Well, there was some chatter last week on this show and on social media. We saw a photo that I had of the snowblower that was in the house.
Oh, yeah.
If you recall, I have a sad update about that. During the snow removal process from the first snow last week, the brand new snowblower out of the box worked for 20 minutes and then started making a crazy noise that indicated it was not going to work anymore. So it has now been taken to a repair center to conduct some warranty work while I am stuck with the shovel on this heavier round of snow that occurred in the last 24 hours.
Perfect timing. You'll get it back and you won't need it anymore because it'll be 50 degrees.
No doubt about it.
You put it away for the rest of the year.
It's a good time to take a snowblower into the shop right now. If you want to wait 3 to 4 weeks for them to look at it, I'll tell you that.
Well,
Everybody got theirs out of storage, or in my case, out of the brand new box, and now it needs to be fixed.
at least I hope you won't need it when you get it back. If it takes a month, like if you need it in the middle of March, that's going to be a problem for everyone.
I should just return it. I don't know. I'm having some buyer's remorse now that it worked as poorly as it did. It worked fine for 15, 20 minutes, and then it shut off on me. All right. We had a question in the mailbag last week about how Nebraska was going to manage a situation where two players on the team earn vastly different amounts of income through NIL and rev share, and how they can be expected to form a bond within the locker room, within the team structure. And I don't know that we gave any great insight into that. It's hard for us to know on the outside. We kind of just said, hey, this is happening around college football. There's discrepancy in the NFL in the pay, and they make it work. Maybe it's really no different than the last couple of years with the NIL already in place. As you mentioned before the break, Matt Rhule sat down for an interview with Josh Pate of 24/7 and CBS, and he was asked about this, or he gave an answer directly related to this topic. It's almost like he was checking out our mailbag. And he said, quote, "I pay my defensive coordinator a lot more than my GA, yet they work the same amount of hours to the same standard. I tell our players that, hey, you're all going to get different things. Comparison is a thief of joy. Why don't you just worry about being great and the money will come?"
Easier said than done. And I think that's a similar answer to what we gave, right? Like, you don't really know the dynamics until you are met with the individual situation of exactly what's going on. Like, I think he has a way that he wants to run his team, right? He has a mindset that he wants his players to be in. And it doesn't like it's not 100. Like, you're never going to get. I shouldn't say never, but you're probably not going to get like a 100% buy-in on every. Like, you don't have 105 clones of Matt Rhule, right? So like there's always dynamics that are going to change, and that are different. So it's, I thought that interview was fascinating. He talked a lot about the things that it takes to manage a program right now, and he even mentioned some of the coaches that come from his coaching tree, like Fran Brown and Joey McGuire, who, weren't necessarily like hotshot play callers, but are program managers and understand, CEO types, right? Understand what it takes in that regard, and says, hey, you don't need to be that person anymore. In fact, like, if you are only that thing, it might be hard for you in 2025 to run a successful college football program, because so much of being a head coach is not calling plays on third down anymore.
That's a really fascinating point. And I think it's something that athletic directors have to take into account. And, you're still going to see coordinators get elevated to head coaching jobs, I think, frequently, because they're great leaders, and that's the reason they become coordinators. That's the reason they climb the ladder. That's the reason they get bigger salaries, make more money, get more responsibility, is because they're on a path to getting to the top of their profession. But it shouldn't really be like a job requirement prerequisite. Like, if you've just thrived and you're a great leader and you coach running backs, or you're whatever. I don't even know if you need to have a knowledge of football, but like, as far as coaching a position or calling plays, yeah, he's right. Like, with everything that's on a head coach's plate today, including this latest discussion we just brought up about dealing with players who are comparing their money, their income to their teammates. Having been an offensive or defensive coordinator, it factors pretty low.
Yeah.
On what's necessary to be a head coach, especially if you hire good coaches for those positions.
It's really, really interesting, and it's something that he believes in, and obviously we've talked about it before on this show. I mean, that's Matt Rhule, right? Like, he is really, I don't know if he's enjoying this shift in college football, but like, he is a CEO type.
He's embracing it.
It fits him. He's embracing it, and it fits him.
One topic I want to get to here at the end. So this week in New Orleans, the Big Ten and the SEC are meeting, the meeting of the minds. They're discussing, among other things, an idea to restructure the CFP format so that it moves to 14 teams or 16 teams. And so what would happen, the speculation coming out of New Orleans, is that the Big Ten and the SEC would get 4 automatic berths apiece. And then you'd get 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC, which gets you to 12. And then 1 G5 and 1 at large if it's a 14-team playoff, or 3 at large if it's a 16-team playoff. And I think like the some of the media in this sport feel that like we're supposed to be up in arms over this. Like we're supposed to be really upset that the Big Ten and the SEC are taking charge even more. And I kind of find that, I'm curious about you, I kind of find that almost comical, because we're like 95% of the way to already being in this place. So last year in the 12-team playoff, the Big Ten got 4, the SEC got 3. You had 2 from the ACC, 1 from the Big 12, a G5, and Notre Dame. All of those teams would have been into a 14-team possibility. Plus, you'd have had 1 more SEC, Ole Miss, highest ranked in the CFP, and 1 more Big 12, BYU. How's that so much different? How is that ruining the sport from where we're already at?
Okay, that's a great point, because I am mad at this, to be very clear. I am mad at this, but I am not mad about the Big Ten and the SEC like grabbing, like the Big Ten and the SEC already run the sport, like you said, and they're already getting the majority of the teams, into the playoff. What I am mad about is the constant need and necessity to change everything all the time. Why do we change it? We had a 12-team playoff for 1 year, and we're already talking about changing the seating, changing the amount of teams that were in it, and like we need to overhaul this whole thing to make it whatever. You're never going to get anything done. It's like this in sports. How often do we talk about it with players, right? Like you're going to be better in your 3rd year at a place than you are in your 1st year at a place. It's just science. It's just how it works. And so if you can't change the playoff every single year and expect to get anything close to what you want out of it. The volatility is insane. And it's not good for the sport. That's what I'm mad at.
You got 10 years with the 4-team playoff. And
yeah, I want more. I want 100 years. Everything should stay the same forever.
Well, it looks like you're going to get 2 with the 12-team playoff, because this stuff that they're talking about would go into effect at the earliest in the 2026 season. And I think it's inevitable it's going to happen, whether it's this exact format that we're discussing, or if somehow another entity out there is able to get some leverage away from the SEC or the Big Ten, which I don't even understand a scenario where that would be possible, and force them to do something different, then maybe we're looking at a slight variation from what's being discussed in New Orleans. I think you have to make a decision as a college football fan. Either you're in on the Big Ten and the SEC running things, or you're just not really going to enjoy the sport that much, because they're dictating all of it. And this is going to extend to scheduling, which I hope, to me, that would be a good thing. I'm with you on like, let's not change the postseason format every year. Let's find something and see how it works over the long term. But I am on board with evening things out with some kind of a scheduling system where the Big Ten and the SEC are doing the same thing.
The other thing that would happen here probably is that conference championships would go away. I mean, there'd be no need to do it anymore if you're guaranteeing that 4 teams from the Big Ten are in the college football playoff already. Like you're putting your 2 1-loss teams, or your undefeated team and your 1-loss team in there with an opportunity to give themselves 1 more loss, and then just put a dent on their resume, or play an extra game, right? We got to win, in a 16-team playoff. You got to win how many games to win a national championship if you're playing a conference championship as well? Like 17 games, it's a lot.
Yeah. So, conference title games are on borrowed time. Last thing that I also heard being discussed around college football circles this week is the potential elimination of spring practice and just going with OTAs in the month of June and July. So
interesting.
I feel like I've heard that idea before, and not just from us on this program. It's been discussed. It's been a popular topic this offseason.
All right. Appreciate you tuning in here on this Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget to get your questions in for the mailbag show on Friday. We'll take those at any point throughout the week. Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten, where Craig puts the Big Ten first. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.